Our guest for today's episode is Aboli Joshi. She is a product designer and manager working in the healthcare industry. She is currently working at Cura Technologies and has graduated from NID Ahmedabad in Industrial and Product Design. I am Mayank Khandelwal and you are listening to Whiteboard.fm. Hey Aboli, welcome to Whiteboard.fm.
Hi.
So let's get started with the interview. Oh, yes. So let's get started with the interview. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Aboli Joshi. I'm a product designer. I'm basically focused on the healthcare domain. So currently I work at a healthcare startup called Cura Technologies. What we do is we create software that's used by doctors in outpatient departments in hospitals.
Right. And how did you get started in design? Because from your journey that I've read online, you started as a product designer and then you moved to healthcare design. How has that been like?
So basically, when I was in school, I used to just really enjoy drawing and stuff. But and I always thought I would study something in like the humanities. So I thought I would be like a journalist or something. But about ninth standard or so, my dad started working with some NIDians, and that's when he realized that this is like a profession that people do. And so at that point, he kind of introduced me to the idea of being a designer. And in 11th and 12th, I prepared for all the entrances and then I gave the exam. My NID exam went so badly. Like I was 100% convinced that I'm not going to get in. But I somehow landed up there. And then I decided to specialize in product design. And so one of the other things that's always fascinated me, even in school, was biology. I've always been really interested in the human body, in like how it works, how it functions. And so even when I went to college, they asked us to pick up briefs for design projects based on our interests. And I always ended up picking briefs that were related to healthcare somehow. And so that's just kind of how it all started. So by the time I reached my graduation project and decided to find a job after that, it was pretty clear that I wanted to remain focused on healthcare.
Interesting. So Aboli, like you mentioned how you explained how you got interested in healthcare design because you were interested in humanities as well, and that led to healthcare design. Now, a lot of people don't know what healthcare design is, and those who think they know, they often don't really know as well. It's misinterpreted, or like there are multiple versions of it. So, can you deep dive and tell us what healthcare design is?
So I personally don't think that it's like my skill set as a designer. I would say I'm a UX designer or a digital designer. So the kind of work that I do or the processes and tools that I follow are very similar to anyone else who's a digital designer. The main difference is that I'm focused on the healthcare domain, and with that comes a certain amount of domain knowledge. So I would say the main difference or the main definer is the fact that when you decide to work in healthcare, you do have to go in an immense amount of depth in terms of understanding the domain, understanding how your different stakeholders think, and understanding how the healthcare system works. It's an extremely complex system. So because of that, I think what ends up happening is people choose to specialize in this because once you start learning about the domain, it kind of becomes your area of expertise, right? But in terms of like my skill set, you also have physical product designers, for example, who choose to specialize in healthcare and they work on medical products. So I would say the main definer or the differentiator is just the choice that you want to work in healthcare and kind of building your domain knowledge and your expertise about it. Yeah.
Right. So, can you tell us what your first ever healthcare project was?
Yes. So my first healthcare project was actually at Elephant Design, which was where I did my first internship. So that internship happened at a very lucky time because somehow that summer, all the batches in college got a 4-month holiday instead of the usual 2 or 3 months because they were like changing the schedule. And so I ended up spending a good amount of time at Elephant. I interned there for 4 whole months. And so during that time, I worked with Ashish, who's the head of product design there, and Anand Pasotkar. And so one of the things that they were working on was one of the clients was a company working on a stroke rehabilitation device. So what they were developing was basically a device that has a digital component and it has a physical, like an attachment. And so for a stroke patient who has loss of mobility or they're not able to move a certain body part, the aim of the device was to help them exercise that body part and regain their mobility and, again, be able to use that.
Right.
So what I worked on at that point was actually, like, now that I look back, it was information architecture and digital design. And again, I really enjoyed that experience because it's a relatively small team. And even though I was an intern, they just gave me a lot of chances to just try stuff and just, whatever I thought my best hypothesis was, they allowed me to kind of explore it. So actually, just that by chance, it happened that that was my first foray into working on something in the healthcare industry, in like a real context. Yeah.
And include apart from the project, what other work did your internship at Elephant comprise of?
I was helping in general with brainstorming sessions, and just like intern stuff, in the
Right.
sense that I was sitting in on like a lot of meetings and just observing what was going on, observing all the live projects that they had going on at that point. So yeah, and some basic like Photoshop work and stuff like that.
Also, what are some of the challenges that you faced off when you started as a healthcare designer? And are there any nuances when it comes to your work as a healthcare designer, healthcare product designer, or when it told versus a normal product designer?
Right. So in terms of challenges, one was basically just finding work that I wanted to do. There's very few like healthcare focused design companies, I would say, in India.
Right.
I mean, there are a few and they're doing very good work, but what ends up happening is sometimes you're looking for a job and they're not necessarily looking for anybody, and that those kind of situations. But that was one big challenge for me, was finding work that intrigued me and interested me. The other aspect was that I believe very strongly in taking a design-led approach to developing healthcare products. And like even within the organizations or startups that are doing healthcare work, it's not necessary that everyone has the same philosophy. So it was also really challenging for me to find an organization where I felt like I could do that and take that kind of ownership of my work. Another challenge was obviously making the transition from being a physical product designer to being a digital designer, because I was trained as like an quote unquote industrial designer in college, and that was always the focus. So in terms of the skills needed, in terms of like kind of changing my mindset, it was a big learning curve for me. But yeah, I'm really just glad that someone took a chance on me, and like my current boss and mentor, she kind of took a chance on me and said, you know what, I'll teach you. Just join. So yeah. Yeah. In terms of sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part was, what are the key differences or nuances between a product designer and a product designer for healthcare?
Got it.
Right.
Again, like I said earlier, I would say it's basically just domain knowledge, and it's the fact that you kind of get very deeply steeped in a lot of technical complexities regarding healthcare. You have obviously the clinical side where you have to learn how to talk to doctors, learn how to understand what they're saying, and kind of come up to their level and be able to speak to them as peers. That's one aspect of it. And then the second aspect is the whole regulatory side of things, where you need to know what are all the legalities surrounding healthcare products, healthcare data, and all of that stuff. And so it's just a learning curve in terms of picking up all of this stuff. Even I don't know everything at all yet, but that's why people choose to specialize in this, because it's a very niche domain in that sense. Yeah.
Right. Can you tell us more about your work at Cura Technologies?
Yes. So the way that was set up is a little bit different from your typical tech company. So our design team is equivalent to our product team. So each of us on the design team is not only working as a product researcher and designer, we're also creating product requirement documentation and working very closely with the engineering team during all the development. And each of us acts as an owner for one of our individual products.
Right.
So because of that, I think I get to take a lot more ownership of what I'm doing, so that Yeah, that's a really interesting way that we're set up. So yeah, what I do is starting all the way from product research, right in the exploratory phase, all the way to creating prototypes, creating mock-ups, having meetings with doctors. I work a lot on content. So not just creating visuals, but also all the way to product requirement documentation, working very closely with the development team, and then finally deploying the product on the ground in the hospital. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. So what is a typical day? Like you mentioned what your entire work profile is, right? So what
Mm.
is a typical day for you at Cura Technologies like?
So now there's a pandemic, so it looks quite different now than what it was before.
Right.
But what it would typically be like, it really depends on where we are in the process. But in a week, I would spend at least a day or two in the hospital. Obviously, that's not possible right now, but I would be in the hospital either for the doctors who are currently using the product, or if we're in the research phase, I would spend a lot of time shadowing doctors, trying to understand their mental model, and trying to understand the kind of information and workflow that they need. Apart from that, the rest of the days I would be in the office. So on those days, it was usually doing my homework based on all of the meetings with the doctors that I had. So reading a lot of clinical documentation and stuff like that. And then, like I said, working on product requirements, working on prototypes, and sprint planning, backlog grooming, all of those difficult things.
So it
So
does
yeah.
act as a product team, is but the domain knowledge regarding to the field of healthcare is what makes it niche, I feel.
Yes.
Because the other
Yes.
in terms of other digital product designers, like you can still adapt and learn about it. But healthcare, I'm assuming you need to deep dive into the domain.
Yes. Definitely. Yeah. So all of us kind of become like mini experts in our individual like healthcare subspecialties. Yeah. We understand what most of the doctors are saying. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Abuli, can you tell us what are some of the favorite projects that you worked on?
Yes. So most of my work at Cura right now is under an NDA, so I can't really show you. We're technically in stealth mode. So I'll show you one of my projects that I worked on in college. It's a classroom project.
This
And
is
will
the
you see
project
it?
that you had worked on at NID.
Yes. So this is one of the classroom projects that I did in my time there. So this was done with one of my batchmates, Gorika. We were, and this was done in our third year for an 8-week project for it was a design project called Technically Complex Product. So it's basically a product in the neonatal care space. The reason that both of us decided to take up this project is because we wanted to work on something in healthcare. So we kind of started out by just exploring the domain and just going to a bunch of different hospitals and seeing if there were any needs that we could find. So I'll just give a very brief overview to neonatal care because I'll be using a few terminologies that won't make sense otherwise. So a neonate is basically any baby who is below 28 days of age. And so any neonate who is not stable or who is ill or who is premature or has a low birth weight is kept in a neonatal ICU, where the baby is basically kept in an incubator or a radiation warmer. The main effort here is almost to recreate the conditions of the womb so that the baby can recover better and kind of stabilize before they can go home with their mothers, right? And so what happens is that in India, you have a lot of rural areas or secondary healthcare centers in like tier 2, tier 3 cities where it's not always possible for the baby to get access to a neonatal ICU. And so this leads to a lot of infant mortality when that could be avoided if there was a better process of transporting the baby to the ICU. So when we started out with this project, we started by visiting NICUs in Ahmedabad. We went first to a government hospital. We wanted to see what the scenario is in a more resource constrained setting. So we went to VS Hospital in Ahmedabad where we saw their NICU. And we also went to the opposite end, which is like a bit more of a high-end private hospital, which is focused on neonatal care. what we wanted to understand was what are all the problems that exist in this space, and how can we, like, which of these can we actually tackle, right? What is something that we can take up as our project? Also, as a little bit of background, so let's just talk about the kind of equipment that you use in a neonatal ICU, right? You have either a radiant warmer or you have an incubator. Both of these are just intended to maintain the baby's core body temperature. The radiant warmers are like an open trolley and the heat is provided from the top. And the incubators are a completely closed system where the heat is circulated and it's humidified as well. So the pros of the radiant warmer are that it's very easy to access the baby because it's completely open and it's very easy to clean the device and all of that. The pros of the incubators is that it's mainly used for babies who are extremely weak because it's a completely closed environment, and it prevents the baby from losing water through their skin because it's a completely closed environment. The cons for radiant warmers are that the baby tends to lose moisture from their skin. So that's called epidermal water loss. And what we saw was that there tend to be a lot of jugaads that they use to prevent this from happening. They literally put plastic wrap over the top of the radiant warmer to prevent this from happening, which is not ideal, obviously. And it also takes up a lot of vertical space because it's much taller than an incubator. The incubators, the main problem is that they're extremely expensive and they're very difficult to maintain. So most hospitals have very few of these and they're only used in very specific cases. And if you suddenly open the incubator, it can cause environmental shock for the baby. So it's something that they have to be very careful about. Now let's talk a little bit about how the baby ends up in these in the first place, right? So a typical scenario is that a baby is born in a primary healthcare center or in a maternity hospital, which may or may not have a neonatal ICU, right? So at that point, there's a lot of different steps that happen, and it's a very convoluted process to actually get the baby into an NICU. So you have certain points in the process where the baby is just waiting, like they're just kept on hold for some time. In some points in the process, the baby is completely exposed to the external environment. And between all of these, you have the baby being moved manually by hand because it's not like there's some high technology being used here, right? People are just kind of doing jugaad using the existing solutions that we have. So typically you would have the baby being born somewhere. They get checked by the doctor to see if they need any NICU care. And then, so at that point, they're kept in a radiant warmer, which is available to them. If they do, then they call a neonatal ambulance, which has its own specific type of incubator. It's called a transport incubator. So when they actually reach the hospital, they're kind of stalled until the moment that the parents complete a bunch of documentation. They have to do a lot of forms and all of that. And so at that point, the baby is kept in a radiant warmer. One of the things we saw here is that in resource constrained settings, they have multiple babies in the same radiant warmer, which is technically a very bad practice, but that's something that happens again because of resource constraints. And then finally, the baby makes it into the NICU where they're kept in a radiant warmer or an incubator as per their needs, right? So based on all of this research, we kind of came down to fundamental problem areas that we wanted to address. Neither of these devices are technically an optimal solution for what a neonate needs. And because you need multiple devices across this entire process, it leads to a lot of high cost and it reduces the accessibility of this kind of care. There's also repeated transfer between the devices. It increases the chances of infections and of the baby going into hypothermia. And you have very high wait times for NICU care because you have overcrowded hospitals with not enough staff. So our brief was that we wanted to create a single device that makes this entire process completely seamless, fast, and ideally less expensive. So these were the considerations that we had in mind when we were working on this concept. And we had two key innovations that kind of allowed us to change the way that you would typically look at these products. So this is where I found it really useful to be someone who was external to the healthcare system as a designer, because you're able to kind of relook at things that they consider established knowledge or established practices from a new perspective. So one of the things that we thought about was, why is it necessary for you to have that much space between the heating element and the baby? If we want to save a lot of space and make this a much more compact solution, we can provide radiant heat, but from below the infant. So that allows us to save a lot of space and easily transport the baby if needed. You would still have a sensor which is placed on the baby, which allows the temperature to be maintained. It's basically just like a thermostat, where if the baby's temperature goes up, the heating element switches off. And we redesigned the bed to allow heat to rise up in the environment without causing any burns. Another was this kind of false dichotomy between having to keep the baby completely open in a radiant warmer versus having to keep the baby completely closed in an incubator. In a practical scenario, it makes more sense to have something that's a little more flexible. So what we came up with was this idea of having a partially closing device. So you have something that is almost completely closed if needed, but if you need to easily access the baby, or if the baby is more stable, then you can kind of open the lid, or you can keep it half open. And if needed, you can even just completely collapse the sidewalls and lift out the entire tray bed, so that again, you're not touching the baby with your hands, you're touching the baby using a sterilized piece of equipment. So with both of these together, you kind of create an environment that is not compromising on the access aspect of the device, but is still protecting the baby and keeping it safe without leading to water loss, epidermal water loss. So at this point, we did a bunch of rough prototypes. And the solution that we came up with, I'll just quickly take you through how that scenario would work. So let's imagine that a maternity hospital has one of these devices on hold, which they can use to maintain neonates during the checkup process. If the patient needs to be transferred to an NICU, they can call an ambulance. And at that point, you can just disconnect the device from the power source, allow it to run on battery, and lift. Just one or two doctors can just lift the entire device and carry it into the ambulance. Once they reach the hospital, which has the NICU, you can unload it onto a trolley, which allows you to kind of move it throughout the hallways of the hospital. And then while the admission process is going on, it can just stand on battery power outside the NICU. You don't need to place multiple babies in the same device, because they're all already coming in using a single device. Once it's time to actually take the baby into the NICU, you can open the entire device, lift up the tray, and take the baby into the same device, but that's been sterilized, which is inside the NICU environment. And so we've made all the provisions necessary for example, any IV lines or any CPAP lines that are needed. And at this point, it can just remain connected to power and be used as a regular radiant warmer or an incubator.
Right.
So we also just spent some time thinking about the materials and the specifications. And we came up with a super Jugadu prototype, which was using Arduino. We were doing a lot of testing to see how the temperature maintaining would work using the prototype that we made. So our aim was basically to think about how you could use the same solution across different contexts and kind of make this a much more cohesive and simple process, the process of the baby being transferred to the NICU. And hopefully if something like this, if this concept actually came into being, then it would actually lead to more cost effectiveness for all of the businesses involved, because you're not dealing with multiple pieces of very expensive equipment.
Makes sense.
So that's the project.
Wow. So yeah, so when you said you're going to show a project, I assumed that it's going to be a digital product design project, but this was a product design project, and it was so different in terms of like actually implementing it as a mock prototype for like using Arduino. Also, as design students using Arduino, how was your experience?
It was fun. I would say it's what we were creating was basically a simple flex switch feedback loop. So it wasn't extremely complicated.
Right.
Um, yeah, we had a few courses in Arduino, so that's why we specifically chose to use that, because it was something we were already familiar with. But yeah, it was fun. It's fun to tinker around with stuff and like try
Yeah.
new things.
I was going with the approach, like along why I was asking about Arduino is because I wanted to ask along the lines of what is your approach in terms of picking up new things and compounding in terms of your skill set? Is it difficult?
Mm.
Is it once you get into the loop of compounding, does it get easier? What's your perspective towards it?
I mean, I'm always open to learning new things. So like, I'm always very interested. For me, it's just a time thing, especially because in the lockdown, I think for me, work has been very intense. I've kind of had to completely relearn or reshape my way of working, right? Because we are all just dealing with something completely new. So specifically in the lockdown, I'm not sure if I've been able to learn a lot of new things, but otherwise I just try to be curious about stuff. And like my best friend is Google. Like anytime I don't know something, I will always Google it. You know, like I think even just reading a Wikipedia page, if you know how to parse a Wikipedia page, it makes it much easier to at least pick up the concept, even if you don't necessarily know like the skills in detail. You know, yeah.
Another question I have is, Aboli, how does healthcare design, according to you, how does healthcare design improve the industry, the medical industry in general, and what is the scope of healthcare design according to you? What is its future scope?
The industry, you mean the healthcare industry or the design industry?
Healthcare industry.
Yeah. So I think uh, you will see a lot of new people coming into healthcare design simply because people are now realizing how badly designed healthcare products are. And one of the reasons for that is these are technically usually extremely complex products. Even if you're talking about physical or digital products, whatever, the compliances or the regulatory frameworks that you have to work within and the amount of informational complexity that you're dealing with is extremely high. And so because of that, you see people approaching it from a very technical angle and not necessarily from a user centered or a human centered angle. So I think the more designers that start working in healthcare, it's like the greatest thing that can possibly happen, because we're kind of thinking about it from a perspective of someone has to use this technology. There's a reason that entire hospitals still operate on paper. It's because most of the tech that exists is almost completely unusable. And people don't want to use terrible technology, especially not when you're a doctor and your main focus is how can I help this patient. Your main focus is not like I want to document everything that I'm doing, right? So I think there's always like an immense amount of scope in this industry because, like I said, people are slowly waking up to the fact that there needs to be change, and you need to approach this from the perspective of who is actually using your product and not just from a perspective of technology. You know?
And how do you feel that can happen?
I think you mean how can more designers come into the space?
Yes.
That's a really good question. I think part of it is kind of us as a community. We always want to be human centered, right? And so I think slowly we kind of need to encourage people to take on a little more than they can chew. And that's kind of what ends up happening in this space, where you as a designer can get very easily overwhelmed thinking about the fact that you're working on something that is potentially, you know, life or death related, for example. I think it would be really great if we can just uh, empower each other to do that kind of work, you know, create spaces where we are able to do that kind of work and kind of step up to owning that and taking the responsibility for that and um, yeah, doing all that work. Yeah.
Also, Aboli, everyone knows what the current situation is going on with respect to COVID-19.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel that could have been better dealt with? if the design situation in healthcare industry was better?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that, so one thing I think that is very clear is it's not like we could have prevented it. It just happened. It's happened. But I think one thing that has become very clear is the absolute need for robust healthcare systems across the world. And I think people are seeing how their healthcare systems in their countries are completely failing them. The reasons for that are many. Part of it is obviously income inequality, which impacts everything that we do and is like an extremely compelling force that impacts everything. But apart from that, it's also just that you kind of have this unchecked privatization of healthcare, where instead of it being about the patient, it becomes about business, and it becomes about how do you earn more money, right? So because of that, you have examples of like, you would have seen those images being circulated of hospitals charging obscene amounts of money to just admit a COVID patient, you know, because they know that it's an emergency and they know that they can turn a profit there. So I think as designers working in this space, it's really important to stay focused on improving access to healthcare and improving the quality of healthcare. And that's obviously like a day-to-day decision in terms of the products that we make, but it's also thinking about the system in which your product operates and the fact that some things are literally just a policy decision. So like, for example, one of the things that I'm really interested in is like governmental healthcare policy, and how can we as designers contribute to that in a way that is patient centric and in a way that actually benefits people who need healthcare, you know, and approaching it from a more like markets and system perspective rather than just thinking about the single product that you're making.
Correct.
Yeah.
So these are some of the ways in which these are some of the improvements that could be made to be able to deal better with such situations and in when it comes to health. So what do you feel? How do you think the healthcare design is going to be? The approach of designing for healthcare is going to be post-COVID?
So, I mean, one thing I have to say is like, I need to give a shout out to like all the healthcare workers who are on the ground right now. Um, I've been in touch with a few doctors and a few people who are currently caring for COVID patients, and it's just incredible what they're doing, right? Being someone, I'm not a healthcare provider, but I am like directly adjacent to that industry or almost in that industry. And so because of that, obviously everything I do is going to be impacted by what's happening.
Right.
So like on a personal level, I think for me, the biggest change has been figuring out how to do my work in a completely new way. I tend to be like a very hands-on and like field-oriented person. I really enjoy being in the hospital. I really enjoy being on the ground and seeing how things happen there, right? Um, I can't do that now. So I've had to restructure my entire way of working, of doing research, trying to set up meetings with doctors. And so all of us who work in this space are going to have to figure out how we're going to do that over the next year or 2 years, however long it takes for this to get done. And apart from that, on a system level, I think what's very clear is that like healthcare is going to change fundamentally. You're going to have footfall in hospitals going down tremendously. A lot of things are going to become almost completely remote. You will have a lot of patients doing remote consultations. And so even from like a organizational perspective or from a company perspective, it's a conversation that I think anyone who works in medtech is having right now, which is how do we kind of deal with this new normal, and how do we now facilitate the changes that are going to happen and kind of anticipate what's going to happen. I don't really have any answers, but
No, this does
I think
provide
all of
certain
it.
amount of clarity. This does provide some idea at least that now remote consultation might increase and so on and
Yeah,
so forth, what you're saying.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's not just even the consultations, right? I feel the entire structure of how hospital is set up, the amount of space that's allocated to an outpatient department. Just a
Right.
simple example. Say there are 5 floors on a hospital and they have 3 floors for an outpatient department. Is that going to completely reverse now because our hospital is going to be primarily for inpatient care? I mean, I don't know, but it has an impact way beyond just the products that we're designing. But whatever changes happen, we will have to adapt accordingly. So yeah, it's a lot to chew on and it's a lot to think
Yeah.
about.
While you were explaining and telling us about designing for how designing could be done during COVID or and post COVID, you mentioned that you are also interested in policy design, like being a
Yes.
part of designing government policies. So what I want to ask is, what's your approach for that? How are you going to? What's your goal and what thought process do you have right now in terms of getting to that?
I don't have a thought process right now. It's definitely one of my areas of interest. I think there's a lot of really great think tanks and advisory groups that are doing work in this space already. And I mean, I've kind of been involved in conversations with one or two of them to just talk about the domain and talk about uh, like whatever I know related to it. But I think as designers in general, as a community, you will see a kind of shift. I have been seeing a shift towards people not wanting to work only on products, but also work on like systems thinking and work on services and policies. I have a few friends who are also trying to enter that space right now. So I think this would just be a natural progression of that, where you have people who are policy experts who were previously designers. So,
Yeah. That hope that works out, like because policy
and
design is something would be really interesting as well. So,
yeah,
are there any things that you're learning currently? Any new?
so the lockdown,
Yeah.
yeah, the lockdown has not been the most like side hustle productivity time for me. We're also currently working on something related to COVID. So like work has been extremely intense.
Yeah.
But one thing I have learned is how to bake bread. I think I bake really good bread now.
Nice.
I try to like when I'm not working, I've been just trying to not look at screens because I spend like 10 hours a day staring at my screen.
Yeah.
So I've just been trying to do things that take me away from that, like going for walks and being in the kitchen and stuff like that. So yeah, nothing particularly work related that I learned, but
No,
yeah.
it's still fine. I was asking anything that resets your neurons apart from work, basically, especially during this time when your mind is so focused on work all the time that maybe you need something, either some other form of work or some hobby or anything else that resets your neurons and gets you, um pulls you back from falling into just one thing and going into a continuous feedback loop.
I mean, I've definitely just been generally reading more because I have a little more time. I tend to again read fiction, but I really enjoy drawing like life lessons and strategy ideas from fiction. So
Right.
what I've been reading recently is the Dune series, which is a really well-known science fiction series. Um, I think it's been really useful for me to kind of zoom out and think about this series takes place over like millennia of time. So it's been really useful to help me kind of zoom out and think from a larger perspective. So yeah.
Yeah. So, Boli, what are what advice would you give to someone who's getting started in design right now and is not sure of what field to be a part of, and yeah, and how they
Mm,
can just go and try whichever field they find interested in, just like you did when it came to switching from product to healthcare design?
right. I think this is a bit of like a cliche piece of advice, but I think it's really important to try to search for meaning in whatever you're doing. That could be anything for you. Like it doesn't have to be healthcare. It doesn't have to be something like big and serious, but you should feel like what you're doing is making a difference to somebody somewhere. And so I the only advice I have is to look for things that give you that meaning and to look for things that um, allow you to feel fulfilled in what you're doing. There's this concept called ikigai, this Japanese concept, which is basically like the intersection of things that you enjoy doing, things that you feel help other people, things that you get paid for, and one more thing. But yeah, you can look that up. But yeah, I think it's really important to try and look for that in your life. So yeah.
Yeah. What are top 3 learnings from your entire journey so far?
One is definitely like again, like repeating myself, is always looking for stuff that makes you always looking for work that you feel is meaningful and you feel is contributing to the world in some way. Another is always trying to zoom out and understand the system perspective. I think it's really important to understand, apart from the work that I'm doing, what are the influences, the larger systemic influences that will impact what I'm doing. Because in your mind, you can always create like a perfect scenario and you can say that this product will solve this problem in the best way possible. In real life, everything falls apart immediately. You go into the field and like 5 things are not working the way that you expected them to. So it's really important to, even if you're designing something very small, think about it in the context of something bigger. That's definitely one. And the third is taking ownership of your work. I think the second that you say that these things are my responsibility and you take responsibility for things that you may not necessarily be given, someone says you have to do this. That is one aspect of things. But it's really important to kind of go above and beyond and also try to look for new spaces where you can take responsibility for stuff, right? Yeah, that's it. About those 3.
Yeah. And also, Aboli, what are some of the things that you wish you knew when you were starting off?
I think it's really important to not worry too much about productivity. So like personally, I am someone who's like extremely type A, and it's very easy for me to get caught up in this like spiral where I feel like everything I do has to contribute to something productive. It has to be something that I can tell people about. It has to be something that maybe I can put in my portfolio, or like it will look good on my resume. And I guess that mentality is really useful when you're in college or maybe when you're starting out. But I feel like in the long run, life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so you really need to pace yourself and kind of take moments for self-care, take moments to like relax and find other things to do apart from your work that still make you feel fulfilled and happy. Because I think this is a very millennial trait, which is we kind of pour ourselves a lot into our work and we expect that it will give us everything, but that is definitely not the case. So yeah, it's really important to take care of yourself and not get too caught up in productivity. Yeah.
This has been great, Aboli. Like knowing your journey and the work that you've done and your perspective towards things. I don't know if it's me because of my domain, because of the differences in our domains in terms of the niche or just in general, but it's been great knowing your story and wish you the best. Looking forward to whatever work you're up to. And this brings us to the end of our interview.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are your final words and how was your experience?
Final words. I think I was really nervous. But yeah, thank you for making me feel very comfortable. And this was really great. Yeah. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about my work. I'm generally like not the best at like putting up stuff or like, being on Twitter and like posting things. So yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks for listening to this episode and I hope you liked it. If you watched the entire video, drop a comment below sharing your favorite learnings from this interview to let us know. Subscribe to the Whiteboard.fm YouTube channel to check out other episodes and clips from this interview. This podcast is a part of the 10K Designers Network. You can check out other projects on 10kdesigners.com.